All right, guys, hope everyone's good and well. Got a little bit of a dilemma at the moment that I figured I would bring to both of you. Obviously, you guys work quite closely as directors for your company, whereas I've got a slightly different role. And should I say, I have my finger in multiple pies. So currently working as director for 3 companies, including our venture. And some other bits as well. And I guess I'm struggling with how I make enough time or I get enough time to do all the things that I need to do. Now, obviously, I get that there are only a finite amount of hours in a day. I guess I need to find a way to make my time make more time or make more time of my time. And yeah, I just wondered if you guys had any thoughts, suggestions, and anything I might be able to take from that.
Yeah, that's hard.
It's a doozy.
Perhaps it's more like to be radical. Those are the sorts of people that end up working on a project that really works because they've got so many fingers and so many pies, and the one that sticks is going to stick.
Yes, but the one that sticks needs time, energy, and effort to get to the point where it sticks. So it's, I guess, knowing where to prioritize and balance and allocate your time correctly, wisely. And this is the thing that I think I'm struggling with the most at the moment. I wouldn't say it's hampering me or anything completely, but it's, I think, the next thing that I really, really need to solve to move to the next level.
So for me, there's a biblical principle which I grew up on and I've always applied to professional life, which I like. And it says basically, cast your bread on many waters. You don't know what's going to happen, things go wrong. If you plant something in the sea, maybe a tree might fall on it or whatever, or the winds might blow. But if you do that, you'll never do anything. But if you put the options out, then you don't know whether 1, 2, or all of them are going to succeed. And it's cool. That's almost like having a portfolio of business and multiple income streams or options for things to work out. So I think it's a good thing to have multiple avenues. Although I think you do have to be aware of the investment cost or the investment load, I might call it. It's probably a technical term. And that is the amount of time it gets before it starts to do some of the work for you. Early on, you're doing the heavy lifting, and it takes a while for that to transfer to something that works for itself to a degree. You're always going to be working, but at the start, it's really difficult. And so the reason why I think the most, if you've got no choice but to do them all now, unless there's some stuff you can drop for now and later, one of my favorite terms for the last 8 months in terms of how I work has been pattern recognition. And more quickly you can identify patterns in the way you work, that make things more efficient and get you the results you require for minimal or for less and less effort, then the better your working potential is going to be. It doesn't take away from the fact that startup load can be too much. And so if you're trying to do startup load in multiple places at the same time, it might not be practical.
Yeah, I like what you were talking about in terms of investment and that initial to get it to a certain point where it starts to work for itself. I think you guys would know enough about me to know that I can be quite a meticulous planner. So I like to compartmentalize and, I've got task management systems and So what? Seriously? You've never heard me say any of this?
Who are you?
Okay. Do I even know you? Yeah. So I don't think, obviously you can always get better. I think that I've really leaned into that element, trying to be as organized as possible, obviously no one's perfect, but as organized as possible to kind of get all of that done. I need to find other areas of marginal gain now, I think. But yeah, I really like what you were saying before about the investment period to get to the point where it starts to work for itself.
Maybe you're also, trying to overachieve something. So there's something that we do at our role as directors is we ask people to just make their next steps. So they're achievable next steps that even as you're writing them down, you know you can achieve them, which just inches you closer and closer and closer to the end goal. But ultimately, like being director of 3 companies isn't long term going to work. Yeah.
Well, it depends on what you're.
Yeah, so they obviously each is at different stages and each has different directions, and the idea is obviously to get them all to that point where they can work quite autonomously.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I suppose it depends what they are. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean that I guess that's always the aim. So yeah, but it's just the initial stages where they do require a lot of elbow grease.
Yeah, and it's as I was saying, like load before, it made me think of, loading the boot of the car. There's something called a load lip, which is the bit that juts up. And so if you was pulling, say, a suitcase out of that part, that's the bit that gets stuck. And then once you lift it over that lip, you can kind of slide it over the top. That's kind of like the feeling of once you start.
I feel like you're damaging a lot of suitcases at the moment. I feel like maybe you want to just lift.
Well,
he has the titanium thing, the really strong. Yeah, he must.
Yeah, if you get a sheet actually, and you put something over the top of it. Same as like if you move like a heavy thing, you'll put it on a board so it doesn't scratch from the floor and it slides across with that. So it's almost like, how can you find something to make that load lip more gentle? Can you find stuff that props up your suitcase so it doesn't get scratched and broken? Because again, you don't want to damage your business in dragging it over challenges. And by the time you look back, it's like, okay, well, I made it over the challenge, but you're right, it's scratched and damaged. So how can you find ways to identify what the load lips are, what the bits where the challenges are, and when does it need your absolute attention? Because when it needs your absolute attention, you need to be able to give it. And if you're looking at businesses that need your absolute attention at the same time, then you need to either be saying, I need to put one of these down and start them later, or get someone else to do this in that meantime. But it's like, when is the bits that are going to cause damage if I don't get them done? When are the bits when I need to put heavy elbow grease in and lift up? And you're right, sometimes I can't drag it across. When do I need to actually lift it? And that demands full attention, because I can't just willy-nilly put it behind me. And I think if it's about identifying these, I think and obviously you can only identify so much, because as we know, with all businesses, there's unknowns that come flying in.
This is it.
But as much as you can identify, that can help you, as you said, being a meticulous planner, to at a minimum plan what you hope to and intend to do. Bear in mind that good planning always allows for outside.
Miscellaneous.
Exactly.
Yeah, true. I think a lot of good nuggets in there as well, and actually kind of made me think about how, yes, you want to recognize the key moments where it needs 100% of your time and attention, but actually, if there are areas where, depending on the size or the group that you're working with, if there are areas where you can delegate a particular task, then obviously that's why you do that. And that's why you're in that position. So I guess there's an element of recognizing that as well. Taking some of the bits that I do and say, okay, what of this can I delegate? And what of this is a priority thing that I need to give my 100% time and attention to?
The hard part about delegating early on is normally most things that we do as a startup, the rewards are either long-term or they're based on our beliefs of what's going to happen. And you can't pay someone in belief often. Sometimes you can. And so it's more difficult. It's easier, for example, in a company that myself and Jankee are involved in, to reward somebody to take on a task that we can't do, because you strictly say, here's your salary. Whereas if you're not in a position to do that at that point, it can be more tricky. And so that's where it's tough. That's why the startup period is more difficult than when it's in flow.
And again, different companies at different stages. So with a particular company that is, I would say, at that stage, I can then say, you know what, this I'm going to delegate out, and maybe I didn't give you this particular thing before, but I'm actually going to give this to you now. In another company, I think maybe I'm having to get a bit more creative if I'm thinking of delegating a particular task, and maybe it's short-term work. Maybe it's work for a particular project, maybe that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I guess it's exploring some of that as well. But yeah, I think an additional benefit is recognizing what can be delegated, and sometimes it's more than a case of delegation. You guys would know in this kind of role, you kind of have to be a jack of all trades. You need to be good with HMRC. You got to be good with man management. You got to be sometimes good with some of the creative and design stuff. And with all of those things, there are experts in those fields. And sometimes it pays to just take it to someone who is an expert at that thing, because they'll be able to get it done quicker and to a higher standard than you can.
Sometimes they'll ask you so many questions that you could have just done it yourself.
This is true. This is also true. So yeah, I guess it's all a bit of a fine balancing act. Anyways, I think what I would do now is I would ask you each for a reasonable idea, suggestion, thing I can take away, and an outlandish one.
Okay. So I think the reasonable thing to do is to, for me, am I giving both of these? I guess, and then Jankee.
Oh, I'd say maybe one each, or as you feel, to be honest. Yeah.
Okay, shall I go unreasonable, reasonable? What are you feeling, Jankee?
I can be unreasonable.
Oh, okay.
Right, so I'll be reasonable then. So I think reasonable then is to literally plan everything, give it the best. Because at the end of the day, these are your endeavors. Although, of course, there will be some that involve other people, where you have responsibility for other people. And I think you have to find a way to chart up what your responsibilities are, where your exposure is. Yeah. So what would be the impact of not giving something your time and attention? And if you know the difference between your exposure and your opportunity, then you can start to allocate almost like a Stephen Covey grid of importance of what's urgent, what's important, and to divide up and say what I have to be on and what can be let go. And even if it's desirable to get done now, it still might be in your interest to leave it until you've done the bits which are urgent and important right now. And so it might be as simple as doing that for all of the key areas and all the areas where there's a low blip, where you know that your attention is going to be demanded, and then you can go from there.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good takeaway. Jankee, break the mold. Let's do this.
Well, you could just say yes to everything and do everything that it comes at you. I actually know I think Deola, know some successful people that just say yes to everything, whether they come through at the end or not. But with the stuff they come through with, they end up being incredibly valuable, but they've said yes to everything, and you know they're not going to be able to do it, and that's part of their character now. But actually, that person's still incredibly successful. So I have no idea how it's happened, but it just says yes to everything.
Equal measure success, equal measure devastation.
Yeah.
I like that as well.
And then you just keep changing your deadlines, keep moving them and saying, well, yeah, I know, I said I'd do it, but I'll do it here, now I'll do it here. And it's just a constant.
Feed the reports back.
Yeah.
So
I like that.
We have careful planning and prioritization versus success and devastation in equal measure.
Yeah, just be blatantly just say yes. I'm like, all right, I'll do it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't,
I think I will chew on this for a while.
I hope you take my advice.
Maybe I'll get back to you and let you guys know how it's done. I'll try saying yes to everything for a week as well.
Exactly.
And let you guys know what the fallout is like.
And a whole £50, please, tomorrow. It's not there. Give me some money.
I'll start after this.
All right.
All right, guys. Thanks for the catch up, and yeah.
Good luck.
See you later. All right.